Good evening, everybody. President Obama seems caught in a contradiction vortex. When he isn't contradicting himself, the facts are. Mr. Obama boasted that the economy is improving on his watch, but the August jobs report released today shows otherwise. Today's job report is the worst of this year, and it shows a record number of Americans no longer in the labor force. A meager 142,000 jobs created in August, the lowest total so far this year. And while the unemployment rate did drop to 6.1%, 53 million of the people who are working do so on a freelance basis. That's a third of the total workforce. Fox News political analyst, former Clinton advisor Doug Schoen takes up the impact of all of this on Democrats in the midterm elections here tonight. Also, blockbuster new revelations on what actually happened in Benghazi during the terrorist attacks on our consulate September 11th, 2 years ago. The story straight from the men in the middle of the firefights that night in Benghazi. Fox News chief political anchor Bret Baier joins us with details of his exclusive interview with three of the men who survived. And at this hour, President Obama returning to the United States from the NATO summit in Wales, where at one point he credited what are considered by many to be weak and ineffective sanctions for the Russian-Ukraine ceasefire reached today.
The only reason that we're seeing this ceasefire at this moment is because of both the sanctions that have already been applied and the threat of further sanctions, which are having a real impact on the Russian economy and have isolated Russia in a way that we have not seen in a very long time.
And President Obama also says he's forged a 10-nation coalition among the NATO nations to combat the Islamic State terrorist group, and made sure this time to stay away from phrases other than degrade, defeat, and destroy when speaking of his strategy. Fox News Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry in Wales tonight with our report.
While it took 3 news conferences in 8 days to get there, President Obama finally got his message straight on battling ISIS.
To degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL. We are going to degrade and ultimately defeat ISIL. You systematically degrade their capabilities.
As the president hit those talking points again and again, there were no more admissions that he does not have a strategy, and not a word about how the terrorists could become a manageable problem.
You can't contain an organization that is running roughshod through that much territory, causing that much havoc, displacing that many people, killing that many innocents, enslaving that many women. The goal has to be to dismantle them.
So he finally settled on dismantle and destroy as the goal, though the big question will be whether the president and his team can follow through on a strategy to achieve it, with top Republicans charging the president's failure to target ISIS's terrorist training camps over the Iraqi border into Syria has already given ISIS an edge.
The fact that we have let this go, and especially over the last 7-8 months, as we've watched these columns of ISIS fighters travel city by city and have not hit them by the air, this is irresponsible.
There also continues to appear to be daylight between the president and General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. While the president claimed he did not have a military strategy yet to deal with ISIS in Syria because he was waiting on the Pentagon, Dempsey suggested otherwise in a Facebook town hall yesterday, saying, quote, "At the president's direction, we have developed a military strategy with a series of options on how we can initially contain, continue to disrupt, and ultimately defeat ISIL." The day before in Estonia, the president implied again that the military was still tweaking the plan, stressing it was all about getting the details right.
It is very important from my perspective that when we send our pilots in to do a job, that we know that this is a mission that's going to work, that we're very clear on what our objectives are, what our targets are.
The differing statements among senior officials continued today, with Secretary of State John Kerry saying ISIS can be defeated, but it may take years. Kerry declaring, quote, "It may take a year, it may take 2 years, it may take 3 years, but we're determined it has to happen." while the president has also said it will take a long time. Earlier this week, a top Pentagon official suggested otherwise.
I don't think that this is a threat that's going to be in terms of years and years and years, but it's certainly one that we have to worry about right now.
To show he's getting serious about taking on ISIS, the president said again today he's sending Kerry to the Mideast to help build a coalition with Arab nations. Though first, the commander-in-chief was thinking about his bucket list, making a pit stop at prehistoric Stonehenge before hustling back to Washington. Now, as for that coalition, a U.S. official tells us there are now 9 other nations providing security and humanitarian support in Iraq. Still no coalition for Syria. Secretary Kerry says that support in Iraq does not include any U.S. combat troops on the ground. He called that a, quote, red line, though, of course, other red lines have been flexible. Lou?
Ed, thank you. Ed Henry reporting from Wales.